So we've talked about the trends and micro trends that are influencing our marketplace, our brands, and consumer behavior. And the power the consumer has today to make or break a brand, and the opportunity that we have to build those relationships. It's not as easy as it's said, right? We all know that. We go to conferences and we hear that they've solved all the troubles and have the perfectly integrated communication and integration with their customers. The fact is there are lots of barriers, there are lots of obstacles. 60% of sales e-com will go through Amazon in the not too distant future. There are barriers that we have to overcome to have that fluid, frictionless, tight relationship with our customers. And so this panel is now going to get after it in terms of how do we build those stronger relationships and what we're doing to get around some of the obstacles out there. And Andrea Timmerman, head of our account management team, will lead and moderate the group. Thank you.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Awesome. It's always a good start. So what we wanted to talk a little bit about today is really our audience first approach and really how that really builds and develops our overall marketing programs. So in terms of the overall panel, I just want to do some quick introductions. So we have Tim Lippa, who is the Vice President of Strategy for PMX Agency. We have Seema Garg, who is Audience and Cross-Product Solutions at Google. Did I get that right? Yeah. Good. And then last but not least, Ajay Kapoor, who is the Vice President of Digital Transformation and Strategy at SharkNinja. So just wanted to kind of kick off and say, basically, audience is everything. And everything that we're doing, everything from a media perspective, from a data perspective, all evolves around media. So what's key is that we heard a little bit about microtrends. Apparently, I'm an SWP, so in case anyone was wondering. But we're really excited about how we can utilize audience in our everyday world. So that's what's really key from where we want to go. So looking at all the different types of profiles out there, and ensuring that we're not talking to them from a one-size-fits-all approach, but really understanding how to target them in a really tailored messaging with the right audience and the right messaging.
Cool.
And what's also key is that this isn't something that we're inventing. Actually, the offline side has been doing this for many years, so there are a lot of best practices and lessons learned that we can really drive into our digital strategies as well. So from media to new platforms to technology, everything that we're doing today is allowing us to be better at targeting audiences for our marketing programs. So what we're going to talk about today is really putting the audience in the forefront, putting them in the center, and really looking at that connectivity between media as well as strategy.
Well, I knew I was going to mess up that build. That's why she gave me the clicker. Yeah. It was destined for failure there. You did a good job. So everybody, I'm excited to talk today about it because this is something that we've been focused on for a long time now. I was on the client side for a bunch of years, and this was kind of the holy grail, right? We wanted to always develop our marketing programs based off audience, right? From that and who our core customers were, we're going to go set up our strategy, and from that, we're going to go into our media marketing execution, right? Offline, a lot of opportunity to do that, but let's be honest. I spent a lot of years being a dartboard marketer, right? And just trying to hit the dartboard as much as I could. It didn't work. Spray and pray is the other word a lot of you guys would use to describe that. But what I'm excited for today is that really we're at a point where we can connect audiences, customer, both offline, online, digitally, put it together, and fully execute it in a marketing plan. That's not something we've been able to do before. Definitely new frontier, so good place to be. The journey itself. So we can have arguments about this. I still believe in the funnel. So I think it exists. I just think it's a lot different than it used to be. And I think the reason that's happened is, and they're training me not to say Amazon marketplaces in general, right? It's marketplaces, I get it. But the point is that given that there's a lot of information out there and there's availability of the information, people decide how they want to use it, right? So I've always said, you have to let a customer consume how they want to with your brand. And it's important to think like that. If you're going to fragment them or try to push them into a path, you're probably not going to be successful. Old school marketing for this was Stu Leonard. I don't know if you know who that was of the market, but the saying was, pile them high and watch them buy, right? That's what this is, right? It's let them buy the way they want to, make sure you're there for them, and nurture them through the journey. And I think that's the thing with marketplaces. You know, people are jumping in and out now. They're using it as a comparison tool, a price point shopping tool. You can't change that behavior. The question is, how do you want to interact with your customer, and how do you want to push them down so that you're getting the brand engagement that you want them to have? So I hijacked last year. I must not have messed up too bad, except for the clicker this year because I'm back up. But mobile really isn't a channel, right? And I use that to hijack and say, how should we be treating our audiences? Who should we be talking to? You know, how are we doing that, right? Let's rethink our marketing strategy. And really, I think like you've heard in the previous sessions, it's evolved. Mobile really is part of the journey now. And you can do over under on how many times I say customer journey. I'll try to keep it to 5. But mobile is essential to that. People are going to use it to learn more about the brand, to engage, especially up front before they make a purchase. What you see up here is what the actual traffic percentage is by device for some of the key industries and clients that we have that we looked at. And you can see the mobile moment's come and gone. I think like Jeff said before, is it the year of mobile? Not exactly. The year of mobile is come and gone. But I think the big difference now is from a mobile perspective, people will buy there too. A lot of people are seeing as much as 40% of their sales on mobile. Conversion rate might be a lot lower. Doesn't matter. The question is the point is people want to buy that way. We have to accept that and support that as part of the journey. And what else is happening from our customers? What do we have to think about as we're designing solutions and then implementing strategy in media? It's fragmented, right? So 31% of searches, and there's a whole bunch of stats around this. Maybe it's 30, maybe it's 40, right? But they are starting on marketplaces. Amazon is predominantly there. That doesn't mean that they don't care about the brand anymore or want to interact on the brand site or still have that relationship, right? So it's important to keep that in mind, but you do have to have a solution for Amazon. Why are people going to Amazon to take a look at that? Lowest prices are 58%. It's an easy cross-comparison shopping tool, and again, it's all about the information. We've trained that consumer to want to get things quickly, right? Who doesn't want to get something in 2 days? I get irritated. I ordered a baseball bag for my son. It took 4 days, and I thought the world was going to end, right? It's kind of ridiculous, but we want it fast, right? We've been trained to be like that, and it's about assortment. Now, again, large retailers, even though you might be the second choice, it doesn't mean that it's not important, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't cultivate what that journey is. And again, I kind of precluded this a little bit, but it really does begin with the brand. So consumers still want to go to the brand site first. Search isn't going away either. Don't worry, Google. It's still there. 35% are going to start there. It depends on where you are in the funnel. And I think people are more on marketplaces even because they have an idea of what they might want to buy. I went on there to buy a fungo bat for, I think I was telling Ajay this before. Does anybody know what a fungo bat is? Exactly. I started on Google, and a fungo bat is a bat that you use that's really light so you can hit fly balls to outfielders easy. Who would have figured they made something like that? I started on Google because I was like, I don't know anything about these stupid things. I ended up buying it on Amazon because Easton didn't really have a good price at the end, and that's where I got it. Anyway, that's the behavior, though. I wanted to buy it from Easton, but I didn't, right? So we all need to know we're all falling into this trap too, or this path, I should say. So be thoughtful to that, right? We have to solve around that. But where would people prefer to buy? It's like I just said, I would have rather bought it from Easton. I didn't buy it from Amazon because I liked it from Amazon. I just got it fast and it happened to be a little bit cheaper, right? It was available, it was there. Some surveys are even saying that 88% of consumers would still prefer to buy from the brand directly. So what does that mean for an e-commerce or a direct-to-consumer strategy? It's really important. And what else does that mean? You have the ability as the brand to control your marketing strategy, your positioning. I'm an old school believer in like the Jack Trout philosophy. I don't know how many of y'all have read all the Jack Trout books. It's really good. Go read about positioning. But it's important as a brand. That's your avenue to tell what your story is, what sets you apart, how you should be engaging your consumers. So you can't ignore that. It's something you really need to focus on.
So I think we want to hear a little bit from Ajay. My one question to you is of all the differences in terms of an audience first approach, how are you currently utilizing that at Shark Ninja, and how has that changed over the past few years?
Great, thanks. Tim, those slides look super familiar.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Really?
So just a broad kind of grounding for many of the folks in the room that likely do not know what Shark Ninja is. We are the leading vacuum manufacturer in the United States. Shark brand is our vacuum brand, and then the leading kitchen manufacturer in the blenders, coffee making space under the Ninja brand. And mashed them together, and it's a really interesting conversation at dinner parties to go, where do you work? A company called Shark Ninja. Most people look at me and think I'm making it up. So audiences, right? We've been talking about this. I think Mark did a phenomenal job of talking about those micro trends that we're seeing across the industry and how important that is in that overall consumer journey that Tim touched upon. The key thing, as we've all learned through this process of us going digital and thinking about omni-channel and winning across all touch points so that the consumer has the convenience, the choice, and the experience that they're looking for across any of those touch points, and ensuring that you're able to win there, it's a challenge. I remember sitting across the table from a seasoned brand marketer that had spent years at Gillette and P&G, turning to me and going, I don't know what my job is in 5 years, right? When you think about old school marketing, though the funnel's still alive, you looked at probably 4 consumer segments. And right now, for us to be successful, we have to look at all of those micro segments. We need to understand how you win cross mobile, on desktop, at shelf, in the most meaningful way possible. And the operational aspects against that are immense. It's just a change management through and through. And so, for us, we're early days at Shark Ninja on bringing this customer-centric strategy to life. I think the best companies are doing that, where they're taking that in-market feedback data and really actually funneling it through the overall ecosystem of what that business is and driving it all the way down to what your product innovation strategy needs to look like. So if and when you can start doing personalized products based off of what category you're playing in, your likelihood of winning in that space against your competition increases exponentially. Again, that change management for a company like us that is a manufacturing company built in the 20th century, trying to cross the chasm in the 21st century is tough, right? And partially why we're sitting here with PMX as a core partner is to be able to cross that chasm. And as we were talking, Tim, the big thing for me that's the overarching element is we now have more data than ever. The key thing is, how do we stitch that together? How do we measure against that? How do we really understand if we're winning or losing? End of the day, I think we're trying to move marketing away from the art of it more to a science, but there's a lot of walled gardens and things that we got to play against. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, who's got the answer out there? Somebody does, right? We figured out attribution cross-device. Well, I think like somebody said it before, how many audiences are right? 155? I'm not sure what the answer is. The answer is you need as many as you need to execute your marketing strategy to fulfill who your customer is. And I do think that we need to go back a little bit old school to audience, relook at personas, how we start from the planning, and then how we can implement them. And it doesn't mean that we only have one remarketing list that's 0 to 7 days old, right? It could be 50 of them. The question is also, how can you support it as a business? Because realistically, to develop creative for that, to have the product line, to have everything carried through isn't easy. So that's my way of giving an answer without an answer, but needs to be tailored to your business strategy.
So the one key question I have, Tim, is we all get the assessment, the personas, the profiling, but really it's the execution. And I think that's where we're kind of stumbling down a lot in terms of how do we execute all these great strategic ideas. So can you help us?
Maybe. No, we'll talk about that in a couple slides too, coming up. But yeah, absolutely something we need to get into. And Ajay, I did want to ask you quickly though, online versus offline, what are your thoughts? Because like you said, you have a value chain. You sell your products a lot of different places. It's not just all direct. What are your thoughts with audience with that? How do you guys look at it?
it's ever so complicated, right? And I think broadly speaking, our point of view on offline is we need to figure out how to get smarter around who's actually winning by retailer, who they look like. And what we're trying to do is, as we look at the omni-channel touch points, is fundamentally understand how you properly intercept those individuals across that value chain and that overall consumer journey in the most meaningful way possible. I think our struggle really, candidly, is when it comes down to the offline components, you just don't have that level of granularity and data that you're used to from a digital standpoint. So building out a D2C strategy or building out an Amazon strategy far easier in understanding, hey, I need to likely win on value, I need to win on convenience, and I need to win on selection. I think a lot of those things are still true in brick and mortar, but what those choices are by product selection, by your assortment, by customer type is likely different for us in particular on how we look at Bed Bath & Beyond versus a Walmart versus a Target. And I think part of our success, just to touch upon it, we went from 10 years ago, less than $100 million business, now ranging 10 years later to nearly $2 billion in revenue, all in the North American market, is that we played channel strategy from a brick and mortar standpoint really specifically. And so new product launches at Bed Bath & Beyond is really good for us, while other things like a Costco play has a different consumer segmentation that we're going to go play against. And so I think our company's DNA has done a good job of that. We'd love to be able to get further granularity against that so we could get far more specific when we get down to our product sets, our SKU rationalization, and then our media marketing to go support that.
Yep, totally makes sense. And I think one of the stats that I glossed over before, of course, was that still retail is important. That's not going away either, right? And I think to Ajay's point, you have to think through that. Do you care if they buy it at a Walmart versus a Bed Bath & Beyond? Well, if the Bed Bath & Beyond is where the best sale or the product mix is going to happen for your core customer, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, right? So you just have to know that that's going to be part of it and have a different way to measure and value on that. And I think it's connecting all the data. Maybe I should have Michael up here too to help talk about that. But definitely things like DMPs are going to be able to help with that, and it needs to be integrated with all the CRM data and tracking. So things that we need to consider. So just how do we look at some of this? What do we do with that? So this is the marketing planning process. Again, this is nothing new, right? When I was on the client side, this is how we went about setting it up each year and going after what our media mix and marketing goals were going to be. We're going to figure out our mission, our objectives, what's our brand promise, did we hit our goals last year, what do we need to do this year, how are we going to get there, what's our growth target, and then everything funnels from that. What we really think it's important is to figure out who that audience is up front and how we're then integrating that into the rest of what the media and the marketing mix is. I think that's what's gotten a little bit lost. I think we were really good at that in 2005 at the offline side, but then we got online, and then we've got connected TV, and we've got marketplaces, and it's like, who the hell is our consumer? It's not easy to figure out, right? So we have to get back to that. And how do we look at that as an agency from PMX? Well, we do believe in looking at that deep-rooted data up front, right? So what's actually happening in the market? And it's not just what's happening within channel, right, or within media. I think, like Ajay said, from a product selection, if Shark's out there trying to hit a certain consumer in Bed Bath & Beyond, but that core customer doesn't want to buy what that product is, how we buy the media really isn't going to change that. Let's be honest, right? If we drive people there, it's not going to result in more sales. So we have to figure what that is up front and then connect that to the rest of it. Really figure out what the CRM data says, what the first party is saying. How do we then integrate that into a plan, make sure we're hitting on those macro segments? I'm the grumpy geezer one. I don't know if you had it up there, but that's my micro segment. So you need to say different things to me than you say to other people, right, to get me to make that purchase. So that's what we have to do. It's got to be more integrated than it's been in the past. And how do we do that, like we talked about? Well, again, there's a lot of different data solutions. There's crawl, walk, run for depending on where you are with it. This isn't easy. No one's exactly figured this out. Let's just say it the way it is. Seema's got some great things she's going to talk to us about from Google and how they look at it and do things. But the good news is, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to get started. The point is, let's get started. Let's figure out who our customers are. Let's apply that to what our marketing is, whether that's a list in I promise I wouldn't do the shameless plug, and now I am, right? But an RLSA list in Google, or whether it's putting all your data in Newstar, really cutting it up, doing the third-party append, right, and saying, what are the offline buying habits? How do I apply that back? And then craft content message creative around that, right? So important to create that connected journey together.
And the one thing I'll build on that, Tim, I think it's all about speed now, right? And what I was sharing with you, we're citing great quotes. Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, has a great quote of, it's not about big fish eating small fish as it was in previous years. It's now about fast fish eating slow fish. And so you think about those feedback loops on how quickly you need to be turning around those customer segmentations, how you need to kind of test, learn, and work your way through. That is going to be mission critical. And I think I touched upon it. I think a lot of organizations that come from a traditional background are going through this massive change management of looking at what is the spine of that business and how do you actually continue to keep the consumer, the customer front and center on that. You now have new tools, capabilities, but the end goal is still to surprise and delight that consumer with any touch point that you have.
Totally agree, and I think that ties right back to what Mark said before, right? The way I say it too is it's not Field of Dreams marketing anymore, right? If you build it, they might not come. You have to know who your customer is, why you're building it for them, and then go out there and interact and activate with them. Otherwise, you're going to go out of business, like Mark said. So, Seema, I know you have a bunch of stuff.
I have so much to say. Yeah. No, this is so great. I feel like so many things popped up. Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
So many things popped up that I feel like hopefully I can speak to now. Feel free to chime in when I talk through any of these bits, by the way. But I think the things that really resonate with me, which we at Google are really thinking about, we've been very heavily thinking about the past 2 years approximately, all of our PMs, our engineers working on the audience targeting side of our business. That's where all of our headcount is staffed. When you're thinking about the engineers who bring you Google Search, when you're thinking about Maps, when you're thinking about all the consumer products that you use every day, we have a ridiculous amount of engineers who are working to make audience targeting better for our advertisers. And so the past 2 years have really been a critical point by which we are really doing this and investing so much into it. My job is to think about how we position these new audience targeting levers into the market. How do we make sure our advertisers and agency partners succeed with these new pieces of technology, things that really did not exist a couple of years ago. Some of them haven't existed as of 3 months ago. It's rapidly evolving, and I think it's exciting. And I think what we're trying to really point at are a few of the themes that popped up around there's so many pieces of data. What do we do with it? There's so many different audience profiles. How do we prioritize? And how do we choose as a company our bandwidth of, okay, there are these profiles. Which ones do I have the bandwidth to actually make a personalized experience to turn from a transaction into a relationship? And which ones do I not prioritize or have more of a torso effect of, let me just try to get the next best message to them at the right time. You can't do everything, and it's okay. But what Google's trying to do is, in the same way our mission is to organize the world's information and make it accessible and useful to everyone, we are really trying to do the same with marketing. So how do we get information around your customers and make it accessible and useful to you as marketers? And how to actually use that information to tie it back into your marketing, that 360 loop, what you were just saying before. So anyways, that's my little intro. I'll talk to you a little bit about what's been on our minds. And I won't go too much into this. I'll spend more on kind of how we think about marketing, but I think it's a good exercise to think about in the history of advertising. When you go to Marketing 101, if you go to 100 years ago in the first Marketing 101 class, you're thinking about how to target your consumer, and it's really been around context and content, but not people. If you look at some of these examples, and Google Search did this too 15 years ago when we first launched. But when you're looking at a billboard, you're thinking of what is that intersection of how people are spending their time and who's walking through that intersection and who might see this. What's the context of that intersection? Or if you're looking at an actual web page and you're thinking about what type of person is reading this sort of information on this blog or this particular page itself, and what does that mean for them? Or even on Google Search, if someone's typing in a keyword, what can I assume about that person? All of this is not bad. It's just that it's all that we had for a very long time. And now what we're actually moving into is thinking about who these people are behind the context or the content. And that's what's exciting, because that's how we all want to be treated as consumers too. With all the brands that we interact with, we want to be treated as Seema Garg, the individual, not the person who's searching for X, right? So what we're trying to do at Google is trying to make sense of all of this, because the reality of the situation is it's just becoming increasingly complex. There's more and more billions of people up on this world actually utilizing digital devices. There are more devices than ever before. There are different ways that we're spending our time online. So there are all these new touch points. You've heard this, you know this. And what we think about at Google is that luckily people spend their day with Google. And what we're really trying to do here is, again, take this information and try to make it accessible and useful. When we think about from Google Search to YouTube to Android to Gmail to Maps to the Play Store, we have 7 different properties within Google that each have 1 billion users each. What does this matter to you as marketers? This matters because we can have a very smart way of understanding how people are spending their time online, and it gives you as marketers different avenues to reach that person in that moment that really matters. Not just when they're searching, or make that search experience even more useful, which we can talk about, but when they're browsing, when they're being entertained, etc. So an exercise I like to play is the age-old question when you're figuring out your marketing brief and you're trying to think of who your right audience is. You'll try to think of some very kind of high-level baseline variables to think about them, whether they're male or female, maybe some age brackets, maybe some income, and it usually kind of stops there. We have like a very muscle-related kind of reflex into what are the first questions we ask ourselves as to who is our most valuable customer? Who do we want to target? And what I'll pause and say is that all of this is kind of changing. Because if you were going to stop and think of those things I just mentioned, those variables, what is the most crucial thing you need to know about your audience? I would say it's none of those, because they're just simply proxies for who you think you want to reach. And what we're actually trying to get to is this idea of intent. Who has the intent to buy what you're selling? That's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to narrow down by thinking their content or their context or what their gender is or their demographics overall or how much they make or whether they're a parent. And all that is fine. We need to kind of narrow down to some degree. But what we're really trying to get to, like peeling back the onion, is I don't care what you look like, where you live, whether you have kids or a dog. If you want to buy what I'm selling, I want to be in front of you. So we're kind of trying to peel back that label and trying to get there. And what I think is that you need to make some sense of you still need to do profiling. You still need to narrow it down to some degree, right? But really kind of think of re-questioning on a regular basis. Things are changing so fast. Consumer behavior is changing so fast. Who had intent? The biggest profile of consumer who had intent to buy your product a year ago, it might not be the same now. So how do you, within a company, create the hygiene and the patterns and the ritual to re-question, to reanalyze who is coming to your site, who is buying the most, who is coming into your store, where do they live, what do they do, and what are other types of behaviors and correlations we can find about them to help us truly understand that person rather than the content or context of where they are. So when I work with marketers here at Google and we're really thinking about what leading marketers are doing, it really is this kind of double effect of using audience data, specifically intent-driven audience data, which I could talk a little bit more about, and machine learning. I don't know if we've talked about machine learning yet today. I've been told not to say ML or AI as much as you know, throughout any sort of conference or panel. But what's interesting here is that if you have good data, and when I talk about audience data, it's your own data as a marketer. So it's your website's data, your app's data, your CRM data, everything that you have, and anything that your online advertising partner, hopefully you're working with Google, and Google has lots of interesting intent-driven audiences to help you, pairing that with machine learning. And why this is useful is that there's a certain chunk of profiles of audiences that you want to spend the majority of your bandwidth to make a very customized, personalized experience, not just from online, but from how they interact with you as a brand, from your customer service, all of that. You want this very tailored, personalized experience. For everyone else, either that you're prospecting or just the torso of the rest of your business, we should rely on machine learning to help us figure out what ad to serve at right time, what auction we should bid higher more for, what types of audience profiles, which remarketing list should we actually prioritize at that given point. All of this is happening in a blink of an eye at every ad auction with Google. So that's what we're really investing in. It's let's make better data through audience signals, and let's amp it up with machine learning so that there's less work needed to do the tactical side of ad serving and with the campaign management, and there's more actual bandwidth and energy to the more strategic aspects of how you want to use this marketing to touch your whole consumer outside of just seeing that ad. So I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit more about machine learning and how it works with advertising, because I think it's important to demystify this a little bit. You don't need a PhD to really kind of love how amazing machine learning works. So I want to talk a little bit about Google Photos, which I don't know if some of you use as an app on your phone or online, but it's probably my favorite Google app outside of Google Maps. And something that the Google Photos team has worked on the past couple of years is how do we differentiate things that are within an actual image. So if you look at that image there, there's a cute little animal inside of a laundry basket. It's pretty difficult to ascertain, is this a cat or is this a dog? So what machine learning is actually doing in the back end is instantaneously analyzing the image, understanding at the very baseline some edges and colors, and then it'll kind of go in through a different neural network of understanding what's the shape, and then it'll conceptualize what these shapes actually represent. It'll vet it with millions of other images that might be looking like it, and actually at the output, it will know, hey, is this a cat or a dog? In fact, it is a dog, not a cat. So this is the same sort of thing that's looking into, is this someone who's browsing online in that moment have an intent to buy a Toyota Camry, or they're just really passionate about Toyota Camrys? And that's what we're here to kind of actually differentiate. That seems silly, right? That seems super silly. But if you are spending your time online watching Toyota Camry content, I say Toyota Camry because I actually really love Toyota Camrys. It's my childhood car that we go back to all the time. My parents still drive one. So you could watch a ton of content on YouTube about Toyota Camrys. You could look back at your childhood Toyota Camry. You could look at some specs. You could be talking to your friend about how it's superior to other cars. You might not actually be in the market to buy that Camry at that time. So does Toyota want to target me? You should think about, what are their brand KPIs? Are they just trying to keep me alive and be that word-of-mouth spokesperson? Then yes, then their messaging should be different. But if they're trying to show me some financing rates and tell me that a local Toyota dealership is available with a Camry, I'm not actually the person they want to hit. And it's really hard in the back end to know, is Seema have intent to buy or is she just passionate about it? But the machine learning behind this audience signals actually does differentiate that. And it does this at every ad auction at all the time throughout the day. So I'm getting very excited talking about all this. So I'll just move on a little bit more. I'm going to skip a few slides. Yeah. So when we think about the different moments of intent in the journey, I want you to think about kind of what this means for you. Think about your business. Think about what you're selling. Think about what those different moments of intent might be. This could be booking a trip, looking for a perfect outfit, being a new business owner, needing to buy some new software. All of this these are the pieces of intent that we can actually bring to you as Google through different audience segments, and that you can leverage with different ad copy and hitting these people in these moments. What's unique about this is that when you think about the funnel, a lot of this is historically kind of that mid-funnel consideration set type of targeting from the past 100 years of Marketing 101. And the difficult thing about that mid-funnel set was that we didn't really know how to value it or measure it, because attribution is still an issue, and we knew that we could target people there, but we didn't know what action they were directly going to take. We didn't know when it was going to happen. What's interesting within the Google set now, within our audience targeting and with our kind of bidding platform, we can target these people in these moments. We know that they are the next likely to convert customer, and we can get them to convert at a CPA that's actually reasonable. So this is what we're most excited about within audience targeting at Google, is that we're actually making the mid-funnel turn into your bottom funnel. And that is how you reach those growth goals, rather than just waiting to kind of hit the same type of customer that you'd normally would be reaching. So when we talk about marketers who are working with us to kind of be leading edge, we look at some kind of what's happening in the next few years sort of thing. McKinsey did some analysis recently that said, you know, I feel like I should have been part of this article. It's like this combination of audience targeting, machine learning, AI, and just kind of this vast way that we can reach customers online that we haven't had before is this dawn of marketing's golden age. Sounds like the title of a new book that could be out there to write. But I do think this is important, right? Because attribution is still an issue. But if any of you know about Google attribution coming out, it should help solve a lot of the online to offline sort of issues that we're finding. We can actually have a level of connectivity within marketing that we never had before. And that's what we're excited about, to tie those gaps together, to tie those leakage points. So when we get into how Google thinks of audience, I'll close with a few ideas. We think about audience to leverage these powerful intent signals, use high quality data, put pictures together of who's actually the right customer for you, and to hit them efficiently and effectively. And a framework that we use with the majority of marketers that we work with, it's very simple. Any marketer can use this. Doesn't matter what your vertical is, your business model. It's identify, re-engage, and expand. It's something that you can do at any point in your marketing journey, whether you're starting a new campaign, whether you're in the middle of it. But first, identify your right customers. Are you truly identifying the right customers? Or are you using those proxies, and are you really getting down to who has the most intent to buy what you're selling? And are you doing this on a regular basis? Again, are you doing this as fast and as quickly as the way the consumers are changing? Once you've identified, re-engage with the customers who know you. This is so simple. This is your low-hanging fruit. You're doing so much great work of getting people onto your site, to use your app, to go in store, to whatever level of data you have, to find them again online is so critical to make sure you're not like letting all of those other efforts go unwasted. And once you are re-engaging with these customers across different Google properties or across other properties outside of Google, how are you expanding? And don't just expand for the sake of expanding, but if you want to reach growth goals, you need to hit people who aren't just there already on your site or already kind of coming to you, the status quo. We need to find the next likely to convert customers. We need to expand in a smart way. So once you expand, you'll have new data to identify and analyze, and that's how this loop kind of goes back and forth. Within Google, I'll just mention a few key product innovations that I'm most excited about. When we think about re-engagement, probably the biggest thing that I would love to tell you all is kind of the secret sauce of this whole audience strategy is not just think about search, and not just think about YouTube, or not just think about display. That's something our own company is trying to rid the walls of these parameters of silos and trying to think, if you're trying to hit your audience, it doesn't matter where they are, they're probably somewhere on Google, and we want to hit them in that moment. So if you have website data or app data or CRM data, you should try to re-engage with them no matter how they're spending their time on Google, because you know they already know who you are. So you can use customer match data with your CRM. You can remarket based on remarketing lists for search ads and remarketing on display in YouTube. And on expand, what's exciting here is you can actually reach the most similar to convert customers for you. So people who are most similar to people who've already been to your site, people who are most similar to your loyal customers, people who've converted, or people who have custom intent to actually buy what you're selling. So we know that people actually want to buy that yoga apparel. They don't necessarily are just browsing. And the last thing I'll share with you is that we've noticed that by doing this across platform, when people are not just searching, but when they are browsing, we do see better performance for marketers overall. We see a more than double increase in conversion volume, for example, when you are re-engaging with your customers, not just on search, but also on display and video. So I think that's just how we're seeing, this is the newest and freshest data we've had, and I think this is how we're seeing things evolve. So that's kind of what we're thinking about. How can we hit these customers across all of Google's platforms? How can we do it efficiently? And how can we keep seeing performance KPIs grow by doing that? So I'll stop there.
I have a really quick question. It's a little bit of a challenging one. Who's doing it well, and who should we be watching?
Okay, who's doing it well and who should you be watching? You know, I think I do have like a case study at the end here, which we could go over, but I'll just make it more, I'll talk about a case which I think is doing super well. Macy's is doing really well. Macy's is doing an extremely, extremely good job of being really efficient of all of its customer data. They have the past few years invested so much in making sure their point of sale information in store, their brick and mortar store, feeds seamlessly within their online investing. So they actually have a very strong omni-channel experience. That took a long time. That took a lot of them to invest a lot of time and money into doing that, right? The same way we want to overinvest in our mobile website. Let's say it takes time, takes some money, but it's really set them up for where they are now. They've done a great job of understanding who is most likely to buy. They do a lot of cohort analysis to understand if someone is buying red high heels, they weirdly also buy a men's blue polo shirt. You know, they are actually, you know, trying to see these levels of correlation. And they're doing it across video ads, display ads, and search, and I'm sure across all their social media partners and all the other, you know, different ways they're spending online. So I would say from a retail perspective, which retailers tend to have a lot of data that they can kind of play with online, they're definitely cream of the crop.